Macquarie's Team Studios has been around since 2002 and has released many diverse and notable games, including Scarflood, Clive Barker's Cheerio, Castlevania Lords of Shadow, Metroid Samus Return, and more. Now they are somewhat returned to their roots. After all, the studio was founded by people who previously made the iconic slasher Severance Blade of Darkness. Blades of the Fire is also a fantasy action game with a brutal combat involving swords, spears, and other cutting weapons, but there's we forge them ourselves, and you can clearly see the influence of the Dark Soul and the recent God of War games. So what did they end up with? As for God of War, it's not just about influence, but an attempt to create their own version of Kratos and Atreus' adventure. Blades of the Fire is also a fantasy action adventure with RPG elements, puzzles, and a craftsman who travels and fights alongside a boy who helps men solve riddles. The world the journey through is full of myth, legends, and a fairy tale creature. We meet very colorful characters, including local variation of Freya and Angerboda, and naturally we'll have to fight a serpent too. The man is called Arundel. He is both blacksmith and farrier, and his companion name is Ezio. They are not father and son, but they will develop quite filial relationship, accounting for the boy's teenage fate, as he constantly tries to make sarcastic remarks at the adult. Ezio is a young researcher and scholar who deliberately sought out Aaron to deliver an important artifact, a legendary blacksmith hammer that can forge powerful steel weapons. And this is very similar. And this is very important. The local queen has cast a spell that turns steel to stone. Now only her warriors can fight with steel weapons that shatter other blades. Only our hero can oppose her. And not just oppose her, he's convinced the queen is leading the country to ruin and decides to kill her. What makes this spicy is that Aaron has known her since childhood. The story has emotional moments connected to the hero's past, which we know nothing about for a long time. At the same time, there's many cliches and banalities, including the obligation collection of important artifacts and getting thrown in jail. In this situation, the intrigue and emotion connect to the main character personally, and plus come in very handy. They maintain interest in what's happening. True, for me, the story was saved not by this but by the colorful character for a long time. There's, for example, the consequence with a Glinda, a cross between the aforementioned Freya and Baba Yaga. She doesn't live in a hut on chicken legs, but in a giant beetle, which she simply flies away on during our first meeting, moving her home to another location. For a while, we mess around with a small skeleton whose behavior reminds you a very frightening child. Then we meet a cool and equally deep phantom grandfather who are retreating during battles, declaring a tactical wardrobe, then appears out of a thin air and assures us we are hiding behind a rock the whole time. And generally, like Ezio, he constantly makes funny remarks and comments. Yes, after a while they get tiresome, but initially they are very amusing and lighten the mood. Aaron and Ezio are constantly under attack, and even a local barely walking undead that die in one hit can send us back to a checkpoint with a couple of strikes. Besides them, there's many more serious enemies who can throw boomerangs, go invisible right after attacking someone and set under fire, and so on. I have not even mentioned the bosses, among whom you will find extremely unpleasant characters. You died quite often. While I initially played on hard, I later switched on medium difficulty, and some bosses weren't easy even on easy mode. Sure, you could make fun of my incompetent hands, but I assure you, fighting and surviving in Blades of Fire is generally difficult. Therefore, the game can be called somewhat of a Souls-like, even despite the risks of new sanctions from Andrew McCurry, especially since in combat you need to carefully monitor stamina, dodge and parry, and after that we respawn at local bonfires and run to collect lost Lost Riches. On the other hand, this acquired an unusual Souls-like with interesting and sometimes even unique features. The main one is a necessity to personally forge all weapons in the legendary Magical Forge. This is a separate detailed mechanic. We choose the blueprint ourselves, the type of handle and blade, the shape of the pommel, then the type of the wood and steel to pour, and these are many variants. All of this eventually gets smelt into weapons with numerous characteristics and even their own names. All samples differs not only in damage though, but also in length, weight, speed, balance, and durability. This directly affects stamina, reserves, and how much will spend on repairs. Before battles, weapons can also be sharpened. But it's not enough to choose the blade type and add materials. This mini-game begins where you need to try a forge according to the suggested pattern. This isn't easy, and the result determines how many times we can repair the weapon before it becomes completely unusable. Through the game, we collect forging resources and look for stats where we can unlock new types of blades, pommels, and other details for specific weapon types. Many blueprints unlock after killing the required number of certain enemies. Finally, as you use a blade, its reputation grows. The coolest one can later be given to Glinda in exchange for a very rare forged materials. And all this blacksmith progression essentially replaces the usual leveling. The main character power is primarily determined by his weapon characteristics. From traditional progression, only the ability to find special artifacts in chests that increase health and stamina reserves remain. This you can also discover scrolls that allow you to upgrade the local Estus equivalent or increase the maximum durability of certain weapon types. Estus comes in a very handy here. Without him, our blacksmith can't read and use side scrolls. Another key feature of Blade of Fire is the combat system that forces you to change weapons on the fly. The game has color differences of enemy body parts. If the head, legs, arms, torso are highlighted in green, the enemy will take a full damage. If yellow, they will receive reduced damage, and if red, you better not attack at all. Some are more valuable to swords, others to hammers, spears, and so on. Much depends on type of damage the weapon deals, how it penetrates, block, and armor. Moreover, more than you had enemies suddenly becomes less vulnerable to the same time weapon I was personally beating them it. That is, some enemies also adapt on the fly. And in fights you often need to change attack direction. You can strike from the left, right, from above and below, so you understand if the enemies are really head in a color green, we strike from above, if the legs then from below. And yes, here too everything can change when the enemy open cover, open body parts, or another we have the monitor the lights shown on the air body. You have to change attack types and weapons depending on what space we are in. If it's an arrow with walls, beams and other objects around, sweeping attacks will hit them. Need I clarify how much more dynamic and interesting familiar seeming fights become under such conditions and mechanics. Even so, there's no evidence of combos and special moves, just regular and cherished attacks. Finally, this is also a game about fascinating world exploration. We travel through diverse and picturesque location. This is usually extensive and intricate. Besides the main road, there's all sorts of branches, and the choice of where to go isn't limited to the classic dilemma of go left and find treasure, or go right to get beaten up. There's also up and down options. You constantly encounter stairs and ropes. And once I got so carried away that I first climbed stairs to a roof. From there got into another building and spent a long time climbing to the highest dome, where I found some paladin's body, and Atsu told me I need to learn his name and return later. All this had nothing to do with the story quest, I just look a small detour. You can similarly get carried away exploring some catacombs to find doors close to us, solve another press two buttons simultaneously puzzle, then wander along searching for the rope that leads to the surface, but you will still definitely want to return here later. Besides keys, the obstacles might be lacking the right runes on weapons. For example, the time run not only helps kill magical enemies, but also visibly restores breach and other structures. So this is also a Metroidvania. More than once I returned to previously opened regions, but now with key wounds and desire to get where I couldn't get before, or defeat someone who constantly gave me trouble. However, there is a really story path in Blades in Fire. More precisely, by default, there's a no-map markers showing where to go in the next story. No question and exclamation marks about NPC heads. To enable quest tracking, you will to fiddle around and jump through hoops, and the direction are often general. They might say we need to find 3 items, but where exactly to look them, that for you figure out. All this refers back to good old classic, where the player wasn't led by the hand. Many now criticize Blades of the Fire precise because the authors don't care about player. Indeed, the design of some location can be called excessively confusing. Here you can wander for half an hour clearing the level, find several chests in the process, but still not understand how to progress the story until you notice a rope in one of the corridors. And when they also force you to carry a skeleton boy on your shoulders who run and hides at the start of the fight. Then you need to look for him. It starts to infuriate here. As a mocking us right after the Crying Skeleton episodes, the author gives a phantom grandfather companion who not only constantly makes funny remarks, but also shows early drama symptoms, talking long to the remember what notable about this or that place and where the need button is. So to sum up all of this, pros of the game is the story is outstanding, but it has strong moments and colorful characters, elaborate weapon forging mechanics, challenging battles focus on constant weapon switching, large and picture world that you want to explore, and cons is the lack of the quest indicators will be a problem for many players. Location design can sometimes seem excessively confusing, and some boss repeat or use almost the same moves. Thank you for watching. Please try it by yourself.